All right, I'm here with Mark Muha. Mark, thanks for joining me. This has been great to just get to know some different staff around campus. I already knew you pretty well, but for the athletic community, we're thankful to get to know a little bit more about you. So why don't you share a little bit, like, what do you do here at Cornerstone, how long you've been here, and then what's one great memory you've had, because I know you've had some time here at Cornerstone.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm the director of community life, which ultimately means that I get to work with all 7 of our residence halls, the RDs who oversee those buildings, the RAs who work with that RD to provide a transformative residential community for all of our students. And then I also get to work with some of the major components within that. So think housing, think student conduct, think programming, and then collaboration with a lot of different departments, which is where you and I often cross paths beyond just even being good friends. We get to work together in a lot of ways as we try to make sure the athletic experience and the residence life experience really connect well.
Yeah.
I've been in my role as director for 3 years, so I'm starting my 4th this fall. And before that, I was actually the resident director in Quincer Hall and loved my time there. And for that, I was a student here. So I've actually been a student in all 3 schools. I realized this the last week. I was an undergrad Bible Youth Min major. And then I spent a little bit of time in the seminary, not enough to get a degree or any letters. And I graduated from PGS with my master's degree. And now I'm actually working on my doctorate through PGS too. So I've been around Cornerstone in one fashion or another for 13 years now. So it's been
Wow.
a ride. So in that time, I think one memory that just sticks out to me, we threw an event in Quincer when I was an RD called Fall Smash, and we got like 150 giant pumpkins and tarps out back on the hill. And we just had this major decathlon of events. And I'll just never forget that first year we did it. We did it for 5 years. I'll never forget that first year, seeing the guys, all the athletes in the building, all the the students who were living around them. That's the picture of community that I think drives me forward in my job, is recognizing that everyone has their own small community that I got to see happen in each of the dorm rooms in Quincer, but then to see on one night just everybody coming together and watching what that did for the rest of the year. That's just a memory that's going to always probably stick with me. And the smell of pumpkin mixed with like dish soap, you just can't forget something like that.
Oh, that's funny you say the smell, because you said Quincer. So
Yep.
the Q. I never lived on campus when I was a student here, but I spent a lot of time in the Q.
Oh yeah.
And when you said smell and Quincer, yeah, that goes together. Definitely goes together.
Yep.
So,
But I will fight to the death. I will say VO, there's the first floor VO stairwell, and there is a smell there. That's where I lived as a student for 3 years. And we're working on getting it out, but there's a funk that I think exists there that is equal to or greater than Quincer itself.
that's awesome. When I so I was a student here, left to go work at Davenport for quite a while, came back, and the admission staff did our HR staff did a tour when I came back to work here, and I was walking through certain buildings, and as soon as I walked in, I'm like, it's the same smell that what it was 15 years ago, and I was here.
Isn't that crazy?
So crazy.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I remember texting my wife saying, I think the library still smells exactly. And I was never in the library. Like I
was gonna say you shouldn't have a whole lot of experience with that building.
But you walked in and you're like, I think it smells the exact same. I had a lot of classes up on top of the library, and I think it smelled the same thing. So it was incredible how much those stay with the school. So,
and I think that's the cool part about, when you've been around a place like this, as long as you and I both have, with a couple little breaks in between, you really start to it becomes home, it becomes familiar, it becomes something that's just almost second nature. Because I'm the same way. I don't go into the residence halls a whole ton, but I was in Van Osdale about a week ago, kind of checking out some rooms, and it was the same thing. It was like literally stepping back to 18-year-old me when I moved in to be a freshman living on this campus in that building. There's just something very nostalgic about that. And I'm looking forward to seeing the students move into Quincer and Pickett with all the new renovations we just did. I'm curious to see how much that changes some of the smell, some of the atmosphere, and whether or not I'll walk into that building now feeling like, man, this was my home for 5 years. Or if I walk into Quincer and it's like, oh, this feels completely different.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. Well, a cool thing that I think about you and having an impact on our campus is we talk about family quite a bit. Your family is around a lot, and I really appreciate that. Go into what that means to you to have them so close and the way that you've seen our staff interact with you and your family.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the same actually about you, because actually before I even met you, I remember I took a photo at a basketball game from like the top of Mole Arena. And then I looked in the bottom of the photo and there was a picture of you down on one knee helping, I think Coleman, your son, take a photo with your camera.
Yeah.
And I remember sending it to you when you started working and I was like, hey man, didn't know if you'd want this photo or not. But I think that's one of my favorite things about working at Cornerstone, as you mentioned, just my wife and daughter, Joy and Harper, we live on the corner of campus. That's part of my job, is to live here, to be available for any kind of late night emergencies. And they love being part of our community. Students all know who Harper is. She shows up sometimes in classrooms. I won't be happening this fall, unfortunately, as we figure out what it looks like to try to minimize risk on our campus. But there is something really surreal, and I'm sure you felt this at times too, to watch your child get poured into, mentored, led, even just in what they see and witness of these college students who are working out their faith and pursuing their life and growing as young adults. Like, I know my daughter's watching that. She's only 2.5, but it's so fascinating to see that happening. And I've just felt from the start, my family and Cornerstone have been connected in such cool and vulnerable ways. And so, I mean, 2 weeks after my wedding, my wife moved into Quincer Hall with me. So you talk about smell, she can attest to that. She definitely knows. The first 4 years of our marriage were spent in Quincer Hall with 80 some freshman guys.
And if she can survive any time in Quincer with all those guys, you picked the right one right there.
I think we're good. Yep. Yeah, it's really cool to know that my family is valued by the people I work with. That it's not just something I leave at home and then come to the office, work, go home. That they walk over, they say hi, they have meals. We vacation sometimes with some of the coworkers I have. It's just a really cool feeling to feel like your family is valued by the people you work with.
Great. It's good stuff. Transitioning here, let's go to talk about sports. So I'm definitely in the sports world, so that's easy for me. You like a sport. Your biggest passion of sport is something different than we don't have it here at Cornerstone, and we don't really talk a whole lot about it at Cornerstone. You love the game of hockey. From Minnesota, so that you definitely have that in your blood, literally. Sure. Where did you get that passion from for the sport of hockey?
Yeah, when I was like, maybe, I don't even know how old, 4 or 5, something like that. I remember going to this place in Minneapolis, and my brother and I would just be skating around in circles with my dad. And, I say skating, we're falling, like Bambi on the ice. But I remember looking around and asking, how come we can't have that little, that walker that you skate behind? And my dad was like, not my son. And I think it was, like you said, it was in my blood. I grew up watching it. I was just a little kid, though, when the Minnesota North Stars were sold to Dallas and became the Dallas Stars. That hurt. So instead of pursuing another team in Minnesota, they waited until 2001, I think, before they got the Minnesota Wild. So during that time, I'm watching all the league, and, I'm watching Mario Lemieux for the Penguins and really loved him as a player. Obviously, Wayne Gretzky, he was near the end of his career, but every kid wanted to be him when we're playing out in the pond behind the house. And I think it was one of those where it's just, you watch this sport. I'd go with my dad every year and my brother to the Minnesota High School Hockey Tournament held at the XL Energy Center in Minneapolis. Back then it was the River Center. And you're watching just what it means to work together as a team, to play with such high speed, such brute force and finesse, with a stick and a puck. And I'm just watching it, and it became a part of who I am. I played a little bit. I'm not great. I love playing goalie. But yeah, I ended up falling in love with the Detroit Red Wings. Nicholas Lidstrom was my guy. So even before I moved to Michigan, that had nothing to do with choosing Michigan for a school to come out and study at. But yeah, I think it's just one of those things that as I think back, hockey has never not been somehow part of my life. And now my favorite thing, Harper my daughter, she loves hockey. So I'll start, she'll see a logo on one of my hats and she just points, hockey, hockey. And I'm pumped for when we have hockey come back on Saturday. I'm really hoping things go well with all of that with the playoffs, because I want to sit down. I want to turn it on TV, and I want to watch with my daughter, because she's finally, I think she remembers a little bit from last season, but she's at the age now where she'll understand that we're watching a hockey game, and she's going to be pumped about it.
That's good. Well, hopefully the Red Wings can do something here. I would say I'm a pretty lukewarm hockey fan. I grew up watching the Red Wings because they were so good in the 90s and early 2000s.
Oh, yeah.
My previous job at Davenport enabled me to support the game of hockey more than anything, because they have a club hockey team that's really, really good.
Oh, I know they're good, because one time I was at drop-in hockey playing goal, and I just had an off night. I don't know what was wrong. It was like letting in soft goals all over the place, and I got in my head, and there was this two guys from Davenport's team, and one of them got a breakaway, and from center ice, Aaron, he just does a wrist shot, and I watched it come the whole way, and it was one of those where I was like, all right, I'm not having a night.
Yeah, they can play. They're definitely some good teams. They took those teams that they had took me all across the country too. We went to the Northeast and the Southwest. We played in Arizona State for some games, and just so much fun to watch hockey. Yeah. And I'm hoping that the Red Wings can figure it out here, and I think they will.
They got Steve Yzerman, so I think that's going to help a lot to have the captain back in charge.
Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong. Well, hey, let's end it with this. I usually end it with a question of kind of more of a serious question.
Yeah.
We've been in this thing for quite a while now, and I say we're just in the quarantine, in the stay at home, in the away from community is where we've been in a long time. But we're going to get through this. What message can you send to our students and our campus community during this time?
Yeah, it's a great one. This season's come with its challenges for sure. And we don't necessarily, you and I don't know all of the challenges for our students. We probably have students who have had loved ones who are sick with COVID-19. They may have lost someone with that. And so I want to be sensitive to that and acknowledge that this season has landed differently for everyone. So I can only really speak to how it's landed for me. In many ways, I'm grateful for what it's done to disrupt my life. I've noticed some patterns that had developed because you get into a rhythm every day of the role that's, social media had played in my life, the role that I had stepped into in terms of viewing meetings and people and church and being able to worship together as simply, that's something we get to do. It was very much taken for granted. So I think as I think about this past season, I'm really grateful for the way that it's disrupted my life in some really cool ways. And the opportunity that I've had over the last couple months to really focus on a depth of community instead of a breadth of community with people. So my wife and I, at the beginning of all this, we kind of connected with 4 people who we're really close with, and we said, we want to commit because we're unsure of what this whole pandemic thing looks like. The guidance is all over the place at times, but we want to commit for the sake of our family and our daughter, but also for the sake of having community, to being kind of exclusive with the 4 of you. We would love to say that we're going to sacrifice trying to have community with all the typical people we would, because we want to have a sense of family during this time that cares for each other. And Aaron, it was such a cool season, just to really go deep with a couple of people, to feel like at the end of the day, I thought I knew them. And then I learned that there's so much more to each of those people, and to be able to invite them into my home, to be able to invite them into what it means to parent almost alongside Joy and I, as they are right there with Harper every day. As we're, it makes me think of that Bible verse in Proverbs where it talks about as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And that's what it felt like over this past season was I was being sharpened as we were intentionally diving into a depth of community that I don't think I'd ever had, except for when I lived in the residence halls, to be honest.
Right.
I always laugh because they say, enjoy college. It'll be the only time that you're surrounded by all your friends for, hours every day with nothing else to do. And I'm like, unless you're in a pandemic and you kind of have your Corona fam, which is what we had. So I think that's my encouragement to students, is to consider what that looks like for you today and as you get back to campus. And I'm sure that they've all experienced it to some level with their families. You get a little sick of each other at times, but you're going deeper. You're spending more time with a select few people. And I think that's something that in our culture, we don't always have the luxury of doing because we've had the luxury of doing everything else, whatever we want to do. And so I think that's what I would encourage our community is to think about as you step back onto our campus, whether you're living on campus or not this fall, that the idea of building a family group that says, hey, we're in the midst of something collectively together, and we're going to weather this together, and we're going to come out of the other side of it stronger, feeling like we've connected with someone and allowed the Lord to just work in our lives in some really cool ways. I think that's the encouragement that I would give.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I think we can all learn when you look back at it. There's some days where I wish I had the schedule that I used to have. There's a lot of days that I'm like, you know what? I love these last few months. I love the time with family. I love the time to just kind of be in our own little world. But I'm definitely ready to move forward with whatever forward looks like. I think none of us know what forward is going to look like.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that what we valued about this season, we can bring with us. You know, it won't ever be fully working at home. Hopefully it won't be fully working at home, completely isolated. I don't want that. That's not what I'm wanting for or drawn towards. But I do love the grace that I had the opportunity to extend to other people as I'm working with them and to receive it in return, you know, just to recognize this season requires extra things of us. And that we're all carrying it on some emotional level. And I think we lose sight of that fact that we're all carrying something emotional in everyday life, even pre-pandemic. And I hope that we can continue to acknowledge when someone says, I'm just really struggling today, that we're not like, well, suck it up and figure it out, that we're able to kind of step back and say, I remember what it was like, or maybe I can acknowledge that I'm struggling too. And I've got grace for that.
Yeah, for sure. Good stuff. Well, hey, thanks for joining me. Enjoy the rest of the planning process for the school. I don't even know when this video is going to go live, but we'll put it up there. It could be, so we talk about the NHL starting Saturday. This is probably not going to go up before Saturday. That's okay.
That's fine. Yeah.
But hey, enjoy the NHL. Enjoy the rest of planning for the school year. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate having me.
Yeah.